Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in this special class that we have organized. Dr. Habibullah Pathan is currently working as a director and associate professor at the English Language and Development Center, Mehran University in Pakistan. Dr. Habib has received his master's degree in English from University of Sindh. Yes, he is from the same department where you are currently studying, but back then he was one of the brightest students that we ever had, and he continues to be a very bright and promising professional still. Then he proceeded to do his master's and doctoral studies in education, in language education from the University of Glasgow, a very cold and freezing atmosphere we get there, but he is a very warm and friendly person. Then he did his postdoctoral research at the Department of Linguistics and Philosophy from MIT. And MIT is the institute people dream to just go there, visit there, and he has studied there. So it's such an honor for us that he is with us. And guess what? He worked under supervision of Noam Chomsky. Yes, he not only studied with him, he had a legendary interview with him as well, which I think is available on his Facebook page. And he also gifted Ajrak also, which became a very popular photo. I still adore and love that image. And he's a wonderful friend and a wonderful fellow. He is also supervising so many doctoral MPhil level students. Some of our teachers, our colleagues at the Department of English in Sindh University are working under his supervision as well. So we are really, really lucky that he is with us. So over to Habib Saab, and let's welcome everybody.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Dr. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I hope you can all hear me. I've disconnected from my cell phone because of some electricity issue, but it's okay. So I hope I'm audible to everyone. Can you just confirm?
Yeah. That's how they'll interact with you through speaker as well, and they might interact with you through chat box, so you can pay attention.
Dr. Abir, it's possible if you could read that out, I mean, the comments, and that would be very helpful. So I'll be happy to answer. So if they could use audio, they can ask me a question, maybe stop me in middle, whatever they want. So if you could kindly moderate that, I'll be happy to answer the question in the middle of the session.
Sure, sir.
And that's, yeah. Okay, thank you. So shall we begin, Dr. Finally?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so yeah, so Dr. Faraz Bogio is a very wonderful friend of mine, and thank you for the generous introduction that you and providing me opportunity to interact some of your students, your class. As I understand, your class is applied linguistics third year. Probably they're interested in knowing about the field of motivation, how to study that, how to research that, what exactly is motivation, and its links with especially applied and linguistics in specific. So I will be talking, I mean, on the multiple fronts because it's very multifaceted concept. I'll start off with, for sure, defining you people what exactly is motivation. First of all, I would like to name a couple of people that you might be interested to read more to have broader understanding of the field. And those major people who are researching or teaching motivation are starting with Gardner. He's based in Canada, and I will tell you history where did the research or study of motivation start. Then there's other guy called Zoltan Dorne. He's based in UK. And there's a third major person who is also studying or researching motivation, or the big gun of motivation, called Amma Yoshoida. So you can also study these 3 to 4 major people. There are others as well working in the different contexts, but these are the leaders in the field. So whenever you want to study any specific concept of motivation, I'll be happy to provide you some links or happy to give you some information about the websites, because all articles are available online. So starting with exactly motivation, what motivation is, where does it come from, and how is it linked with applied linguistics, and why should we study that? I start with a statement which exactly is a claim. Normally, researchers don't do such kind of claims, but motivation is the primary impetus, inspiration to learn a language or do any kind of action. I'm not saying secondary, I'm not saying tertiary, I'm saying a primary. So before doing any action, it is important to be from movere, word movere, that means to move, right? And motivation, that means to achieve a goal, to move towards certain action. I mean, that's a non-specialist definition of the word. But if you could study a bit further, you would say motivation is sometimes also referred to internal state or a condition. For example, what is your internal state or condition? It can be a need, it can be a desire, it can be a want that activates. Trying to stop at some keywords so that you can have a proper understanding. So it's internal state or condition. Condition could be a desire, condition could be a want, condition could be a need that activates or energizes behavior. Okay, I mean, that gives you some kind of boost or energizes your behavior and also provide you some kind of direction. And that's little specialist definition of motivation, because remember, uh, motivation technically comes from psychology before it entered into the field of linguistics or applied linguistics. Very complex concept, but I will give you, I mean, try my best to give you some kind of motivation to study this particular concept of motivation. So I hope you got these particular keywords. So motivation is a psychological term, internal states, a condition, a desire, a want, which energizes your behavior and also provide you with a kind of a sense of direction. That's what the major definition of motivation is. If you go back about the term motivation, when the major linguist wanted to have kind of connection between applied linguistics, educational psychology, and this English language teaching, they found term motivation very confusing, even into the even the psychological circles where the concept actually comes from. Because I told you the concept comes from behavioral psychology or psychology at the beginning. So people actually found it so confusing to define that they took out this name, they deleted this name from the psychological definitions, and they said that motivation is a psychological abstraction. I mean, they'd say, since we cannot define it in singular or in one particular definition, so let's technically call it a psychological abstraction, because there were major concepts of motivation and you cannot actually define in one particular way. So if it is a psychological abstraction, so people also thought that when we talk about internal state, it could be divided into conscious efforts and unconscious efforts. Sometimes they're kind of learning opportunities, or they're learning tasks which you learn by conscious efforts, and there are certain concept or a kind of states which are very much unconscious. So learning can be conscious effort, it could be unconscious effort. So when you combine this one, it makes it even more complex concept that you cannot actually study in one particular way. The major issue, again, uh, I'll be talking, definitely giving you links about of motivation with applied linguistics. I'm talking a little bit of the historical perspective. Where does the concept come from, and how did we come about a specific, meeting or converging point where applied linguists understood now it's a concept that we can coin and use in applied linguistics. The major issue with motivation was it was overlapping concept, because remember, you could not reduce certain factors. So for example, people could not accurately define, or people could not reduce motivation to an extent that it can be separated from attitudes, or it could be separate from other factors which interplay, kind of say anxiety, say the attitude toward teachers, or uh, anxiety about use of English within the classroom or outside the classroom. So how would you actually reduce elements in order to study? But then there were certain efforts by a lot of people. I will especially name Dorney and Yoshoida. They made it a little easier for applied linguists to study the concept, definitely reducing to the factors and also contextualizing those particular factors. So uh, I now go, where does it actually come from? And this, now the next major concept that you might be interested knowing about, it's where did the study of language motivation or language learning motivation come from? Uh, it started in Canada, by the way. People are interested to read more about Gardner, you will find that Gardner is considered, definitely, arguably, I will say, as one of the founding fathers of this particular field. And he studied the concept of motivation in Canada. And you can, people who understand geography and Canada and North American, geography, you'll find in Canada, there were two major communities living together. One was Anglophone, and other was Francophone, right? The people who speak English, the people who speak French. So Gardner was very much interested to know why people of one communities, what is the motivation of French people learning English language, or what is the motivation of English people learning of French. So definitely two major communities were living there, and he was interested much to study their motivation. And there the concept started. But again, remember, the studies he developed a major instrument which still is very robust in the field of motivation, called attitude motivation test battery. To date, I must say it is one of the most robust batteries or instruments available to study the concept of motivation. And if you see, there are a lot of factors, a number of people, or you can also study. So attitude motivation test battery has a number of factors that Gardner included. So it started with, for example, integrative motivation and instrumental motivation. Now, if you see the classic division between the two concepts, if you start studying motivation, is just this: it's instrumental motivation and integrative motivation, or then you can call it and the other factor called intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So I'll be talking a bit about these two concepts and tell you exactly what exactly I studied in my PhD also, but I'll be quoting a little bit of the concept of Gardner. So the classical division is integrative motivation and instrumental motivation. If you can see what exactly integrative motivation is, that means uh, Anglophone or Francophone communities learn each other's languages in order to be to be like the people of other communities. So, for example, I want to learn English language in order to be like native English speakers or to be part of that particular community. So I would like myself to speak like a Britisher or speak like American, and will adopt their culture as well. Not only language, but also their culture. That is probably one of the major concept of integrative motivation, which Gardner studied. Although there's now change into that particular concept, but the major thing is whenever you learn a language of other community, the integrative motivation is that you would like to be identified as a member of that particular community. Like even in a Pakistani society, a lot of people like native speaking English style, English culture. You want to adopt everything that is British or that is exactly American. So if you learn language just because of that, want to talk like native speaker, want to be identified in their community and their morals and their attitudes and everything, that means you have integrative motivation of learning language of that particular community. And that is what, I mean, Gardner confirmed this particular premise. The second division was people are motivated to learn a language of other community. I mean, I'm not specifically talking about English. It can be any other language. It can be for other reasons called instrumental reasons. So what are instrumental reasons? For example, you want to learn a language for upward mobility. You want success. You want, let's say, promotion. You want a salary raise, or you want a bigger status in a society, and people, you think people would definitely respect you when you speak that particular language, or you want to again get a lot of, I mean, status in a particular society. That would definitely be called the instrumental motivation. That means it's a reward that you get in order against learning a specific language. It is nothing related to a community that was integrated. But here, when you're learning a language, you need to identify that what benefits am I going to get after learning a specific language. So, I mean, this is a classical divide that started off in terms of, I mean, in Gardner. And remember, at that particular time, the robust battery, as I told you, was AMTB, and I probably have explained a classical divide, attitude, motivation, test battery. But remember, that was quantitative. I mean, it was definitely, I mean, the roots were deeply embedded into the psychology. So definitely they wanted a validation into the battery. So we had quantitative studies. Okay. But the first is, I hope am I audible? Probably anybody wants to ask any question in the middle, you can always peep and ask me a question. Is everything okay, Dr. Faraz?
Yes, all good so far. Yeah.
Okay. If you have any question, probably you can stop me and you can moderate, you can ask me the question. So, as I said, in Canada, where the battery was invented, it was predominantly quantitative in nature. Okay. And the other thing would be that people wanted to see the concept of integrative motivation. Now, remember, I repeat one more time. Now, there's a bigger change that took place in the concept of motivation and studies in motivation. First was integrative motivation. You wanted to be identified with the people or community of other language. For example, I want to be a Britisher. I want to be like American. I want to sound like American, sound like Britisher, want to learn their culture. That was integrative motivation. But remember, when things started contextualizing and people started understanding importance of individuals, so there was a lot of question on this particular concept. So people said, no, I don't want to be identified with Britishers or Americans. Still, I want to learn language for some other reasons. Can be instrumental, but integrative in some other way. So when English language no more remained the currency of this native speakers, so people started questioning Gardner's concept, and they said, no, it's not there. I mean, which English you're talking about? For example, you want to be identified as part of British English, American English, or any other community. For example, there's other forms like concept called Pakistani English or Indian English. So the validity of the determinant studied by Gardner actually had a lot of questions. So now people said, okay, it's not important. Integrative motivation is really not important. It's not a primary thing because of which we learn language. We can learn language for other reasons. For example, I study, now I just also quote some of my studies on concept of motivation. I also argued here, since English is not uh, like Britishers or Americans don't have ownership of English language because there are more non-native speakers of English today than non-native speakers. So English can be learned to be part of any other indigenous community who speaks or interacts in language. So for example, there are different communities in Pakistan, they speak let's say Pakistani English or any South Asian variety of English. So there are a lot of people, they would like to be identified with that particular community, not exactly with Britishers or Americans. So the concept of this global English or world Englishes that coincides here. And remember now, since because of this world Englishes concept, I mean, the research agenda from quantitative is now traveling to qualitative. Now there are a couple of major other, I mean, researchers called Emma Yashoda. She's doing all qualitative studies. I mean, trying to find out micro level factors of language learning motivation or teaching motivation within the classroom concept. Even the Dorne has started collaborating with Emma Yashoda to actually take out motivation from purely psychological context to education friendly to the classroom, from psychology to the language learning classroom. I mean, that was the major shift that took place from the socio-psychological factor period, which was about integrated motivation, come down to the I mean, educational friendly and the concept of time. So these were the major concepts people actually talked about. I gave you a little bit of the history of concept of motivation. The current scenario, definitely after this particular concept, I'll be happy to interact with the students. You can ask me a question. I'll be happy to answer that also. There's now a major question about motivation of learning a specific language. So, for example, motivation changes with time, and why are people not motivated all the time? And now they've entered a particular concept called DMCs, which call directed motivational currents. So now the recent concept of motivation that we people are, I mean, undertaking or carrying out a couple of studies are called the DMCs, which is extended model of motivation. And the reason, I mean, one major divide between the motivation and DMC is the difference between a goal and a vision. So that's I also want you to reflect on. So people say why people do not remain motivated for any particular task or task achievement, because they find a task as a goal. So whenever you want to achieve a specific goal, it involves achievement only. You do not involve anything else. It's the task that you want to achieve or goal that you want to achieve. You do not involve anything. I mean, there's nothing plus to it, right? It's just achieving goal. But remember, when say DMCs, when you consider a task, let's say learning of English language is my goal, or learning of English language can be my vision. So the motivation level difference between even changing the terms kind of goal and specific vision. So I say, let's say English language is my goal, then that means I can be motivated at some time. I can achieve that particular goal. I can forget it at particular stage, right? And even I can forget. I mean, it can be a retrieval of vocabulary, or maybe a structure of a language. I mean, tend to forget everything. Depends. You do not. Yeah, you're not no more interested in that. You're no more motivated that, because it was just a goal. Now let's say motivation is your vision. That means it's a goal, right? So goal plus one, and what plus one is, that it means a sensory element. So for example, it can definitely, I mean, give some activation into your brain. So it can be imagery. So goal and visual can be an imagery. What would you like to be? What you would like to achieve after learning a specific language? For example, it can be matters of identity. It could be matters of, for example, ought to self, or any concepts like that. So a goal would definitely be like you imagine certain things. For example, I can give you one particular example. And if you say, what's the difference between imagining and actually seeing a concept? So goal and vision is like that. So for example, you see an apple, or let's say it's a pen, right? If I ask you, see this pen, and I don't show you the pen, and you say, imagine pen, right? And there are MRIs available when people were asked to see this one, probably a goal, and then imagine it. And remember, there was a very interesting study based on that particular medical MRIs. Brain function faster. There was a major activity at the area in brain where language is localized. Remember, people had the major activity in human brain when they were imagining any particular thing. So whenever you imagine particular thing, you have a vision of learning certain thing. So your motivation of achieving a task or learning a task heightens, right? It goes, I mean, you're highly motivated to achieve that particular task. So DMC is that particular major concept. For us, if you have any question, I'll be happy to interact. I just mostly talked about the historical perspective of motivation. So if anybody's interested
Thank you,
asking.
Habib. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
we'll now let's hold on and wait for a few questions. If you have, if guys, if you have any question, kindly speak to Dr. Habib directly, or you can write it down in the chat box, and we can address to Dr. Habib. My question will be, Dr. Habib, how did you get interested in doing research into this field? What's your journey of coming to?
All right. So yeah, thank you for asking this particular question. I started studying motivation in my master's program at University of Glasgow, and definitely with help of a supervisor who encouraged me to learn this language. But now, being a young lecturer, when I joined a university, I was teaching students from a variety of backgrounds. And I remember I was not able to answer some kind of abstractions. I was unable to, name. Remember, I was not able to provide right teaching materials or right teaching pedagogy or any particular support. But when I joined University of Glasgow, I've written that in the part of my thesis as well. These all questions that I had in my mind were the central or major aims of social psychology of language learning called attitudes and motivation. So that's where I said, okay, these are certain kind of questions, but exactly, indirectly, I was talking about attitudes and motivation. So that's where my study started. It was small scale study at the master's level. But then I got interested, especially I redefined, if you could also see the thesis, I can share maybe the link with you guys about the changing a concept of integrative motivation. So I added the concept, especially in Pakistani context, means people would like to learn English language to be part of people or community within Pakistan who speaks Pakistani English.
Right.
So that
thank you so much. I think we would really be grateful if you could share the link of your PhD thesis. That would be a great help. And secondly, we have got the few questions. DMC, students are asking what DMC stands for.
Okay, it's directed motivational current.
Directed motivational current.
Which is a recent concept. I'm also working on one of the papers. It is that's an advanced concept of motivation. As I told you, when you have vision attached with motivation, you're actually about motivation.
Yeah. Okay, and Paras Mazhar, can you directly ask question from Dr. Habib? I think that'll be a help if you can interact with him. Can you hear me, Paras Mazhar? Okay, her question is, sir, what is the reason we get motivated in between the task while we were motivated in the start? Is there any physiological reasons or the task we deal with?
There could be multiple reasons of remaining motivated. So, for example, if you started a task, you're highly motivated, but there are a couple of things. One is called effort. The second concept called desire. The third is called satisfaction. So, for example, if you continue your efforts, right? But if your efforts are not that effective as you did when you entered a particular course, definitely efforts which definitely do not help you achieve a particular goal can be it can demotivate you. So when you're not putting a particular efforts, you're not persistent in your efforts in order to achieve a particular goal, you still go demotivated and you do not achieve that task. So remember, it's a desire, it's an effort, it's a persistence. If you keep doing that particular, all these particular three determinants that I just talked about, you remain motivated. So I repeat, it's a desire, it's an effort, it's desire, it's persistence. So your effort, how hard you try, right? Your level of persistence and your level of action, all that.
Right. Thank you. We have got 1.5 minutes. This video might be ending, and then we'll start again. But there is one question from Dua. Dua, do you want to ask directly?
Yes, I can ask directly.
Sure, please go ahead.
So, my question was, when you were explaining effort, you explained two terms. There was the conscious effort and the unconscious effort. Were you talking about the subconscious effort instead of the unconscious one?
Yeah, there could be subconscious, there could be unconscious. So subconscious is one of the categories that I talked about when I was talking about reduction. So unconscious means subconscious, something already there, but you're not able to maybe articulate. Unconscious, you do certain kind of particular activity, certain emotions that interplay whenever you're learning particular thing. So for example, let me give an example. If you try to study motivation level of your grandparents who saw a partition pre-1947, learning a language, probably unconsciously or subconsciously, whatever you say, probably they will not encourage to learn a language because they still consider English language as a language of British masters. If you compare, if we change the sample, now see the modern